Sound familiar? You head down to your favorite spot, cast out the bait that's never let you down, and nothing, not a nudge. It's like the fish have just upped and left, while the lad 10 yards down is hauling them in one after another. What's the crack there? Well, today we're talking about the single biggest mistake 90% of anglers make when mixing essences and attractants. It's the absolute cardinal sin that turns a perfect bait into a total no-go zone for fish. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be looking at your bag of glugs and boosters in a whole new light, and you might just spot exactly why your last few trips were a washout. By the way, drop a comment below and tell us what's your go-to scent for a day out. I'd bet a few of us are on the same page there. Let's get back to basics. Why do smells even matter? For a fish, their nose is everything. It's a key tool for survival and finding a feed. In murky water where they can't see a lick, it's the scent that leads a carp or a bream straight to your hook. Tackle shops know this, so they cram the shelves with hundreds of bottles, everything from strawberry and plum to monster crab and garlic. This massive choice has created a bit of an illusion, the idea that the more complex and busy your bait smells, the more the fish will love it. We're told to keep experimenting, mixing and brewing up some secret sauce. And that's exactly where it all goes south. Anglers, especially lads just starting out, start dumping everything into the bucket at once, hunting for that magic ingredient. That is the deadly sin we're diving into today. The quickest way to a blank day is falling for the old trap, thinking the more the merrier. It's all in the head. We reckon if a bit of strawberry dip gets a bite, and throwing in some pineapple booster and lashing cream syrup on top will make it 3 times as good. But that's just not how it works. I think about it this way. Imagine a grand bowl of stew, but someone goes and drops a spoon of honey in it, adds a bit of curry, and tops it all off with chocolate sauce. Would you even touch it? Not a hope. And it's the exact same for the fish. Their senses are tuned for specific food signals. When you mix too much together, you aren't tempting them. You're just hitting them with a wall of sensory noise. Instead of a clear dinner's served signal, they're getting a loud stay away, there's something dodgy here vibe. This is the golden rule of fishing. Overloading your bait with different scents is the fastest way to clear every fish out of your swim. You aren't attracting them. You're creating a chemical no-go zone. Just remember, less is always more. One clean, honest scent will land you more fish than some loud, messy cocktail every single time. Right, let's have a proper look at the science behind it all. When you start mixing different essences, you're basically starting a chemical war right there in your bait bucket. See, most of these attractants are built on different foundations. You've your alcohols, your oils, and your glycerins, and each one has its own way of working. Alcohols now, they dissolve in the water fast, giving you a massive kick, but a short trail. Oils are the opposite. They don't like mixing with the water at all. They stick to the bait and leave those thin slicks on the surface. Then you've glycerin, which is your middle ground, sweet, thick, and syrupy. Now, if you're just throwing an alcohol scent in with an oil dip, without a second thought, you aren't getting the best of both worlds. Not a hope. They can react with each other, making some strange new smell that might even spook the fish. Or worse, they just cancel each other out. That oil can actually trap the alcohol scents, stopping them from spreading through the water. So it might smell grand to you on the bank, but under the water, it's doing absolutely nothing. That's the big mistake. Mixing things that don't belong together because you don't know how they work. You aren't making the signal stronger, you're just mucking it up or killing it off entirely. The next big mistake folks make is completely ignoring the base scent of their ground bait. Now, plenty of anglers forget that their main mix, be it loose feed, pellets, particles or boilies, already carries its own natural aroma. Things like fresh corn, nutty tones, or fish meal are smells that fish know and trust as proper food. When you start drowning that natural base in harsh synthetic liquids, you're just killing off that organic signal. You're essentially shouting at the fish, "Stay away, this is a trap." Instead of just giving the natural scent a bit of a boost, you're masking it entirely. What you're looking for is synergy, not a total takeover. If you've got a fish meal-based mix, it makes sense to sharpen it up with a touch of crab or squid rather than soaking it in a concentrated tutti-frutti essence. The goal is to make that natural scent more tempting and distinct, not to replace it with something completely alien. At the end of the day, you want to convince the fish that your bait is the tastiest, most natural meal in the water, not like they've just swum into a perfume shop. Right then, let's talk about the big one, the battle between sweet and spicy. It's easily one of the most common blunders lads make when they're mixing up their gear. You'll see a fella take a sweet, fruity scent like plum and think he'll beef it up by throwing in a bit of garlic or squid. The logic is simple enough. If the fish likes both, they'll surely love them together. No, in reality, it's a total disaster. These scents are on opposite ends of the spectrum. You're just confusing the poor fish. Think about it. Would you fancy strawberry jam on a bit of salty herring? Not a hope. Well, it's the same for the fish. You don't find that mix in nature, so to them, it's a massive red flag. Now, that's not to say you can't mix your scents. You can, but you have to use a bit of cop-on. You can mix your fruits, say plum and pineapple, or stick to the spices like pepper and coriander. You can even get away with mixing sweets with a bit of nut or cream, but clashing fruit with fish or sugar with hot spices, that's a guaranteed fail every time. It's like trying to play opera and heavy metal at the same time. You're not making music, you're just making a right mess. One thing plenty of lads overlook is how scents change with the seasons. What works a treat in July might be a total waste of time come October. See, when the water's warm, the fish are active and burning through energy. They're after those sweet, fruity hits. Think strawberry, banana, or tutti frutti. That's your classic summer gear. But once the temperature drops, everything shifts. The fish slow right down and start looking for proper protein. That's when you want the spicy and meaty stuff, pepper, garlic, krill, or even a bit of squid and liver. The biggest mistake you can make is trying to mix the two. Don't go throwing a splash of strawberry into your spicy mix just for a bit of sweetness when the water's freezing. In cold water, that sweet scent just isn't natural. It sends a confusing signal to a fish looking for a high-protein meal, and more often than not, it'll just spook them. So, always match your bait to the season and the water temp. Forget about looking for a magic all-year cocktail. It simply doesn't exist. It's easy to forget, but every stretch of water has its own soul, its own distinct scent. A peat-stained lough smells nothing like a clear, sandy river or a heavy, silty pond. To the fish, that natural aroma is home. It's what they know, and they're comfortable in it. When we cast out our bait, its scent starts to mingle with the water's own character, and that's where many an angler goes wrong. If you use something too sharp, too chemical, or just plain alien to that spot, it stands out like a sore thumb. It screams fake to anything swimming below. Take a silty pond, for example, where the air is thick with the scent of organic decay. A subtle hint of worm or bloodworm fits right in there. But a blast of synthetic pineapple? That'll only set off alarm bells. The real mistake is trying to drown out the water's natural scent with some powerful, heavy-handed attractant. Instead, you want your aroma to sit comfortably in its surroundings, just peeking through the background enough to suggest an easy meal. So before you go mixing up your ground bait, take a second. Give the water a sniff or the clay at the bank. Get a real feel for the life of the place and choose a scent that works with the water, not against it. Now let's talk about scent overload from the fish's point of view. We've mentioned it before, but you've got to understand how the mechanism actually works. A fish's nose isn't just a nose, it's an incredibly sensitive chemical analyzer. It can pick up the tiniest hint of a substance in the water from a massive distance. It's how they find a feed and stay out of harm's way. Now imagine you dump a heavy, concentrated cocktail of powerful additives right into your swim. To a fish, that's the equivalent of a flashbang going off right in its face. It's not just a strong smell, it's deafening. It triggers pure shock and a panic response. Instead of drifting in to see what smells so good, the fish just bolts away from the epicenter of that chemical blast. It can't make sense of the signal, it's just too loud and completely unnatural. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in the woods trying to catch the faint scent of wild mushrooms, and someone suddenly shoves an open bottle of industrial-strength perfume right under your nose. You wouldn't be looking for mushrooms anymore. You'd be jumping 10 feet back. That's exactly what's happening underwater when we go overboard with the flavors. We aren't drawing them in. We're building an invisible, impassable wall that sends the fish running for cover. Вот секрет, о котором многие рыболовы даже не задумываются. Разница между стратегией облака и стратегией ядра. Это два абсолютно разных подхода к ароматике, и путать их – верный способ остаться без улова. Сначала разберемся с облаком. Это легкие летучие ароматы, чаще всего на спиртовой основе. Их задача – мгновенно раствориться в воде и создать мощный, но недолгий ароматический шлейф вокруг вашей точки. Это то, что привлекает рыбу издалека, заставляя ее искать источник запаха. Сюда относятся всевозможные спреи и жидкие бустеры, которые мы добавляем в воду при замесе. Ароматы для ядра – это совсем другая история. Это густые, тяжелые составы на масляной или глицериновой основе. Их цель – намертво вцепиться в вашу насадку или частицы прикормки на дне. Они никуда не уплывают, их задача – удержать рыбу в точке, давая ей мощный пищевой сигнал прямо у крючка. Типичный пример – густые дипы. Главная ошибка – это использовать их не по назначению. Если вы зальете густой масляный дип в ведро с прикормкой, надеясь создать облако, вы все испортите. Он просто склеит частицы и ляжет на дно мертвым грузом. И наоборот, нет смысла пшикать легким спреем на насадку, через минуту в воде от него не останется и следа. Нужно четко разделять, чем мы завлекаем рыбу издалека, а чем удерживаем ее под кончиком удилища. Если смешивать эти подходы, ваша стратегия превращается в кашу, которая не решает ни одной задачи эффективно. Разделяйте облако и ядро, и результат не заставит себя ждать. Let's put one big myth to bed right now. The secret supermix. Plenty of anglers spend a fortune and years of their lives trying to find that magic combo of 5, 7, or even 10 different scents that'll supposedly drive the fish mad. They're looking for a holy grail that just isn't there. The truth is, the more you overcomplicate your mix, the more unpredictable it becomes. If you've got 10 different ingredients in the water, you haven't a clue which one is actually working and which one is scaring the fish away. Like we've said before, too many scents just end up clashing with each other. Successful fishing isn't alchemy. It's about observation and common sense. Instead of brewing up some wild cocktail, you're far better off sticking to 1 or 2 proven scents. This way, you know exactly what the fish are responding to today. If things are quiet, you can change one scent for another and see the result clearly. But with 10 smells in the bucket, you're just fishing in the dark. Keep it simple. Clarity is the key to consistent results, not chasing some mythical super mix that doesn't exist. Right then, let's have another look at the technical end of things and get stuck into the basics of how these essences are built. If you want to avoid making a dog's dinner of it, you need to understand the foundations. We're looking at three main players here: alcohol, glycerin, and oil. First up, alcohol bases. Now, the big plus here is they'll dissolve in the water no matter what the temperature is. They kick off a massive scent cloud in no time at all. The downside, they wash away just as fast. They're grand for your sprays or for throwing into a spod mix when you're looking to pull fish in from a distance. Then you've got your glycerin. This stuff is sweet and thick like a bit of syrup. It'll dissolve in the water all right, but it takes its time compared to the alcohol. It adds a bit of weight to the bait and gives it that sweet finish the fish love. It's a cracker for adding to your base mix or for dipping your hook baits. Now, oil bases. Sure, everyone knows oil and water don't mix. It coats the bait and lets the scent bleed out nice and slow. It'll leave a fine film on the surface too. It's the business for cold water or when you need a hook bait to keep its smell for the long haul. But here's the big mistake lads make. Don't go mixing them in the one jar. If you try and put an alcohol flavor and an oil one together, they'll just separate and leave you with a mess that'll do God knows what once it hits the water. Don't be trying to play chemist by mixing different bases. Keep them separate and use them for what they're meant for. Not many anglers really stop to think about the clock when it comes to their bait. But the truth is, the scent of your ground bait isn't a fixed thing. It's constantly shifting. What you've mixed up there on the bank can smell completely different after an hour or two underwater. The real trouble starts when you begin mixing different scents together. At that point, you've lost all control over the process. Every aromatic compound has its own level of volatility. Some fractions are light and vanish almost instantly, creating that first big signal to draw the fish in. Others are much heavier and more stubborn, clinging to the bait particles for the long haul. When you create a complex cocktail, you're basically starting an aromatic symphony that never stops changing its tune. It might smell cracking in the bucket, but once those light, fruity notes have drifted off, you could be left with a harsh, chemical aftertaste sitting right on the bottom. A fish that was lured in by a lovely scent might get to your spot, only to find something totally repelling. By mixing too many essences, you're just guessing, but if you stick to one clean, pure aroma, you know exactly how it's going to behave over time. You can be sure it won't pull any nasty surprises on the fish. Another massive mistake lads often make is trying to keep everyone happy at once. I'm talking about targeting different fish with the same old mix. Say you're after bream and carp together. You know the bream are mad for coriander, but the carp have a sweet tooth for strawberry. So you decide to throw both in the bucket, hoping for the best. Well, more often than not, it'll be a total disaster. You won't catch a thing. Why? Because you're sending out a complete mess of a signal. Every fish has its own tastes, and by mixing scents that don't belong together, you end up with something that's neither here nor there. It won't tempt a bream, and a carp wouldn't look twice at it. Worst of all, you might attract the wrong crowd entirely. Those oversweet aromas can draw in a massive shoal of tiny roach or bleak that'll just pester you all day and keep the big lads away from your hook. You're far better off picking one target and sticking to what they like. If you really want to try for both, have two separate mixes ready or change your plan as you go. Just don't go making a fruit cocktail for the whole lake and expecting results. It's a waste of time, so it is. Don't overlook the visual side of things. We're always talking about scents. But remember, mixing different liquids can completely change the color and texture of your bait. You've got your bright reds and yellows, and then you've got those dark, oily boosters. If you go mixing a bright pineapple with a dark squid dip, you're likely to end up with a nasty, muddy-looking mess. And in clear water, that's a real problem. A pop-up is supposed to stand out, and your natural particles should look, well, natural. If the color looks murky or off, you might actually end up spooking the fish instead of pulling them in. Also, keep an eye on those thick syrups. They can make your mix too sticky and kill the breakdown, which isn't always what you want. So when you're playing chemist, think about the look and the mechanics as much as the smell. Sometimes a clear liquid is the best way to go to keep that visual edge. Water temperature is the absolute boss when it comes to how smells work under the surface. It dictates exactly how far a scent travels and how the fish pick it up. If you ignore the thermometer, you're on a hiding to nothing. In warm water, molecules are buzzing, scents spread fast and hit hard. That's why in the height of summer, even a tiny bit of attractor goes a long way. But when the cold hits, it's a completely different story. Everything slows down, and the scent barely budges. To get a result in the winter, you need an alcohol-based mix that can actually move through those cold layers. The biggest mistake you can make is sticking to your summer habits in the dead of winter, like pouring oil-based dips into icy water. That oil just thickens up, turns solid, and won't release a tap of scent. On the flip side, if you use a heavy alcohol attractant in the summer heat at the same dose you'd use in spring, you'll give the fish such a shock you'll clear the swim. Mixing different types of attractors only makes things more unpredictable. The bottom line is simple. Always match your scent and your dosage to what the thermometer is telling you. Look, one thing a lot of anglers overlook is the harmony between your hook bait and your feed. You can spend hours prepping the perfect ground bait, subtle, attractive, dead on, and then you go and stick on a boilie that's been soaking in some nuclear dip with a completely different scent. Think about it from the fish's perspective. It follows one scent trail to your spot and then finds this one lone bait screaming a totally different, unnatural smell at it. To a wary fish, that's a massive red flag. It's the classic sign of a trap. The right way to do it is making sure your hook bait is a logical extension of your feed. It should have the same profile, maybe just a bit punchier, so it stands out as the cherry on top. That's what a proper bait program is all about. When you start mixing clashing scents, you're basically wrecking that program. You're sending the fish two conflicting signals, which just makes them nervous and extra cautious. So always aim to keep your aromas in the same family. They should complement each other, not fight each other. Keep it consistent and the results will follow. Now then, let's have a chat about the human factor. See, we tend to pick out scents based on our own tastes, things like vanilla, caramel, or fresh fruit. Subconsciously, we reckon if it smells grand to us, the fish will be all over it too. But that's where we've got it dead wrong. To a fish, a scent isn't about pleasure, it's pure information about a potential meal. Plenty of smells we find lovely are completely alien once they hit the water. A heavy, sweet vanilla scent might not look like food to a fish at all. It could just as easily come across as some strange chemical warning. The big mistake is trying to treat a fish like a person. You've got to try and think like one of them instead. What's actually on the menu in this water? Bloodworms, snails, weed, or maybe some fallen berries. Those are the scents that feel natural and safe to them. Now, the shop-bought additives definitely work, but usually it's because they trigger certain receptors, not because they mimic nature perfectly. And that's where you have to watch your dosing. If you go too heavy, that nice aroma turns into a chemical alarm bell for the fish. So, next time you're picking an additive, don't be asking yourself, do I like this smell? Ask, is a fish actually going to understand and want this right now? Let's look at a classic blunder every angler makes at some point, trying to mix tutti frutti with squid and octopus. Now, these are two absolute legends in the game. One's sweet and fruity, The other's a heavy, pungent, fishy scent. You'd think by mixing them you're getting the best of both worlds, a bait for any situation, but in reality, it's a total non-runner. Think about it. You're trying to mix pure sugar with heavy protein. It just doesn't happen in the wild, so it feels completely unnatural to the fish. Plus, they're meant for different jobs. Tutti frutti is your go-to for warm water when the carp are active and looking for a quick energy boost. But squid, that's your heavy hitter for the cold, when they're desperate for protein. By throwing them together, you aren't making a super bait. You're making a mess that performs worse than if you just stuck to one or the other. In the summer, that fishy scent is just too heavy, and come autumn, the fruit feels completely out of place. It's a perfect example of trying to be too clever for your own good. Don't try and mix oil and water. Just use the right tool for the right time, and you'll be grand. Now look, after everything we've said about overdoing the scents, we need to talk about the other side of it, the power of being subtle. Sometimes the absolute best way to attract fish is by using next to nothing at all. On waters that see a lot of pressure, where the fish are constantly hammered with strong artificial smells, they get proper suspicious. They start avoiding anything that doesn't smell right. In a spot like that, the lad who keeps it natural is the one who's going to catch. Ground bait that just smells of fresh grain, or a hook bait with a tiny, tiny hint of nut, that's often the secret. The fish see it as safe, honest food. It doesn't mean you have to bin your additives altogether. It just means you need to learn the art of the microdose. We're talking a few drops per kilo. You want to create a whisper, a little trail that gets them curious, rather than something that's shouting in their face. The biggest mistake most anglers make is not knowing when to stop. They keep pouring it in, worrying they haven't used enough, when really they've already gone way over the top. Trust the natural smell of your quality ingredients. Most of the time, that's more than enough to get the job done. So what happens if you've made a right mess of it and gone way too heavy on the scent? Can you actually save the mix? Well, you might be able to bring it back to life. The simplest trick is just to dilute it. If the smell is fairly humming, just add the same amount of plain ground bait to the bucket. Give it a right good stir and let it sit for a bit so the aroma levels out. If you've poured in way too much liquid attractant, try throwing in some dry bits like breadcrumbs, crushed biscuits, or even a bit of powdered milk. They'll soak up the extra liquid and take the edge off the smell. But look, that's only for emergencies. If you've mixed a load of scents that just don't sit right together, you're probably wasting your time. Honestly, you're better off just scrapping it and starting a fresh batch. At the end of the day, the best way to fix a mistake is not to make it in the first place. Go easy with the additives from the start and you'll be grand. To wrap things up, I've got one simple golden rule for anyone starting out with attractants, or even for those of you who've got a bit lost in all the experimenting. It's what I call the rule of one component. For an entire season, or better yet, two, pick just one or two high-quality scents. For example, go for something sweet and fruity for the summer, and a spicy or fishy one for when it gets colder, and then stick to them. Your goal here isn't to find some magic mix. It's to learn exactly how that one scent behaves. Experiment with the strength, try it out on different waters, pay attention to how the fish react as the weather changes, and most importantly, keep a diary of what happens. That's the only way you'll truly understand the nature of attractants. You'll start to get a real feel for the dosage and know instinctively when a scent is right for the day and when it isn't. Once you've mastered that one component, you can carefully introduce a second, knowing exactly how they'll work together. If you're just jumping from one bottle to another and mixing everything at once, you're not learning. You're just creating chaos. True mastery comes from knowing your basics inside out. Start simple, keep it consistent, and the results will follow. Right then, let's pull it all together. We've covered a fair bit of ground today, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to one simple point. The biggest sin you can commit when mixing your essences isn't just picking a bad combo, it's being reckless. It's that old trap of thinking the more complex it is, the better it'll work. In reality, the secret to a good catch is balance, moderation, and actually understanding the water you're fishing in. We've seen how different bases can clash chemically, and how mixing things like fruits and spices can end up sending a warning signal to the fish rather than an invite. Sometimes, believe it or not, the best scent is no scent at all. I hope the next time you're looking at a shelf full of attractants, you won't just see a bunch of smells, but a proper set of tools to be used with a bit of thought. Cheers for sticking with the video until the end. If you found it handy, do us a massive favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any more fishing secrets. Make sure to tap the bell for notifications too. Now here's a question for you. What's the maddest scent combination you've ever tried? Was it a stroke of genius or a total disaster? Drop your stories in the comments below and let's get a bit of a crack going.